You are listening to AccessUW, a podcast series brought to you by the University of Washington Office of the ADA Coordinator, where we highlight insightful discussions, informative interviews, and valuable insights about accessibility, equity, and inclusion, all within the realm of higher education with experts across the UW. In terms of accessibility, each podcast and a transcript are made available at the Office of the ADA Coordinator's website at www.washington.edu/ADA.
Well, welcome back to AccessUW. I am Heather Evans and am delighted to be here today with two incredible guests and colleagues, which in our fashion, I will invite to introduce themselves. Briana, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Heather. My name is Briana Randall, and I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Career and Internship Center on the UW Seattle campus. So we serve students who do not have a career center in their college. And another part of my role is to support all the career development professionals across all three campuses. I've worked in this center for almost 21 years, and I've been director for 6 years. And I have been the primary partner engaged in the community of practice that we'll talk about later.
Great. Thank you so much. And welcome to you as well, Travis. Will you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Heather. So my name is Travis. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the operations manager at Disability Resources for Students. We're the office on campus that provides reasonable accommodations for all of the departments across the University of Washington. And I've been in this role for about 2.5 years. I'm really looking forward to kind of talking about what I know about my office here and our participation in this community of practice, and then disability and accessibility at large at the University of Washington.
Great. Thank you both so much for being here today. So, we're here today to talk about basically the transition from college into the employment sector and some of the cool things that are going on campus right now in improving that transition process for students with disabilities. So we're going to just jump right in. And I want to start kind of big picture. Briana, if you could tell us a little bit about your overall impression of the degree to which students with disabilities at UW use career services or even participate in internships. And if you have the impression that they engage with these services at the same rate or to the same degree as non-disabled students on campus.
That's a good question, and it's hard to know because of the non-apparent nature of a lot of disabilities and also the non-disclosed disabilities. My guess is that students with disabilities participate in career services either with us or another career center at a lower rate than non-disabled students. I think there could be many reasons for that. One is just busy schedules and the time it takes to, navigate the academic environment as a student with a disability. As we face with all students, a lack of knowledge that we exist. And for students with disabilities, perhaps a lack of confidence that our center would be able to speak to disability and the transition. I will say maybe because of all of those things, it's possible that a lot of students just aren't really worrying about life after graduation until graduation happens. We do continue to see students for appointments for 3 years. But I think even with all students, we're going to do the academic thing while we're in school, and then we'll worry about life after that when we cross the stage.
Thanks for that. And, all of that makes total sense to those of us in the university and who work closely with students. And I think it's a really great point to emphasize that students can come back and use the career services for 3 years after they've left the University of Washington. So I just feel the need to amplify that right at the beginning. And so, Travis, I'm wondering from your perspective as someone who works at the DRS office here at the UW campus, we know that DRS isn't officially involved in helping prepare students transition to the workforce. But can you talk a little bit about your own experience, whether officially or unofficially, maybe working with students and helping them prepare for employment after graduation?
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate the question. I think it's definitely true that we in our office are really focused entirely on providing access to everything we can across campus for students who work with our office, the students that we serve. I think we're up against a lot of what Briana mentioned as well at DRS with making sure students know we exist. I think sometimes we get students who only find out about our office later in their UW experience and or don't think that they can investigate what we can do for them. And we always encourage everyone to apply to our office. That's the more formal side. I think it's also something I've been thinking a lot about lately that informally, we also are an office that employs a large number of students as office assistants as well as other various roles throughout the office. We've always well, for the past a number of years, I'm not exactly sure how long it's operated this way, but we're one of the largest groups of student employees. And so in a more informal capacity, I do interact with students who are thinking about the transition into the workforce constantly. And so I think that's been a really interesting perspective and kind of avenue to explore from as an office, but also as an individual working here and with great partners across campus in offices like Briana's and others that we can kind of help guide people in the right way, less formally, but just hopefully increasing that kind of path going forward. I want to kind of move to formalize the guidance we can provide for students that we serve as well as the student office assistants.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, I appreciate the work that both of you do, both officially and unofficially. But we know that today college students with disabilities are underemployed in comparison to folks with disabilities upon graduation. And I'm curious, Travis, I'm going to start with you, and then Briana, I'm going to come back to you and ask you the same question. But Travis, from your perspective and your experience, would you say that the majority of the students who identify as disabled that you work with feel prepared to jump into the employment sector after graduation?
Oh gosh, I really have gone back and forth on this, not just in my time working with this group in the community of practice, but also in my role and really ever since I started working at the University of Washington and in higher education. I think it really varies on individual students, no matter what their background is or what their field of study is or what their career goals are. I think it's difficult to generalize, but I do think it's dependent on the moment and kind of the effort that students put into finding what resources are available. I think there is a lot of hesitation, kind of as we were talking about with the previous questions. There's a lot of hesitation to ask for help and to kind of explore what's out there for students. Sometimes in relation to the level of academic success that they've felt they've had too. So students can really miss some of the opportunities just because they feel like they want to find it on their own. And I think one of the things I'd like to do is make sure students know it's no kind of bad mark to look for help and to explore the options and to, even if our office at DRS we can't help directly, we can get you in touch with some people who might know these things better. So I have found that I've counseled just a couple of students closely to kind of through some of their concerns, and I've found that generally it's I think they're better prepared than they might think.
Wow. Well, it's always nice to hear a positive note that generally they might be more prepared than they think. That's fantastic. Um, so, excuse me, Brianna, I'm going to turn to you and I'm going to kind of ask you the same question, but more in for your staff and your team, that do work specifically with students with disabilities, is the general impression that they're well prepared? And also, what seem to be the primary areas that disabled students need extra preparation or maybe don't have the same kind of opportunities or haven't been exposed to the same kind of skill building that maybe non-disabled students have?
Again, going back to how I answered the previous question, it's actually really hard to know. We don't know if a student has a disability, and so it's a little bit hard to answer. I will echo what Travis just said from a perspective of an employer and who works with employers. I think by nature of a student with a disability surviving the academic system, they have resiliency. They have so many skills that would serve them so well in a workplace. And I hope they realize that. I think most students are probably not as well prepared for the workplace as they think they are. Even if they work really hard on the job search process and they have good resume and good cover letter and good LinkedIn profile and good interview skills, the workplace is not like school. And sometimes the skills that have gotten you to be successful as a student, perhaps to get an A, are not always the same skills that work well, specifically in your first year or two of a job. So I think most students need a little bit of help getting prepared to be successful in their first job. And one of the areas that really helps with that is having some work experience through an internship, a research experience, even working on campus, like in Travis's unit or my unit. All of those types of experiences help students learn how to be supervised, learn how to take feedback in a different way, learn how to navigate uncertain projects that are handed to you, cranky customers sometimes. And I'd really like to see more students, but specifically students with disabilities, having internship or internship-like experiences, because I also think that will then give them the confidence to apply for more and better jobs after graduation.
That's fantastic. Again, this is part of why it's so valuable to have both of your perspectives in the same space to be thinking about this. And, the great segue into kind of the focus of why we invited you today was to talk about a community of practice that you're both involved in with the Gregory S. Fehribach Center, which is a center that is dedicated to providing paid internships for students with disabilities to work with employers, specifically in the sectors in which an individual student is pursuing an education or is majoring in. Now, full disclosure to the audience, I am a member of the Research Advisory Board for the Fehribach Center, and so, as always, have been muddying the waters, trying to connect amazing change agents to other amazing change agents across campus. But this center has been doing this internship work for only a handful of years. It's really grown, and our early evaluation data suggest it's highly effective, just as you were saying, Briana, in that providing disabled college students with very concrete, real world work experience helps them land good jobs after graduation. And so the Fehribach Center decided to share their process and knowledge with other campuses and have formed this small community of practice that put career and internship offices in partnership with disability resources offices on each campus they work with. And while this has a lot of benefits, joining a community of practice with these folks, I know has involved extra work, planning, labor from both of you as well as your offices. So let's just start with kind of one of the sticky issues, Briana. What motivated you? What persuaded you to take on this additional labor of joining a community of practice with this center and engaging in partnership with the DRS office on campus to deepen internship work for disabled college students?
This was an easy yes for me for a variety of reasons. One is that a primary part of our center's vision is to provide additional support for students who have either more barriers to employment or fewer career supports. And we were going to be working this coming year on accessibility of our website, of our slide decks, all the things. And so this really was just right along those lines. I will also say more personally, as a director, sometimes I work on things that aren't super fun, like budgets and front desk scheduling and all those kinds of things. So the chance to really work on something I found very meaningful was also very exciting. And it might have been the day I got the email and maybe I was, bored with everything I was doing. But yeah, it was a super easy yes for me. And it has been extra work, but I also have benefited a lot and have enjoyed the collaboration here on campus as well as with Fehribach in Indiana.
Well, part of the reason that I am so interested in this collaboration and this project is of course, as a disabled person, I have struggled myself with, feeling like I'm not prepared to be in the workplace and thinking through different accommodations, particularly having a set of disabilities that flare and fluctuate, and that my accommodation needs change over time. And, I'm curious if doing this work or being involved in this partnership has any personal connection for you.
Thank you, Heather. Yes, I love that question because this is if I can just go into some of the reason that I work in the Disability Resources for Students office is because of my own journey related to being diagnosed as a college age youth. In my second year of university, I was diagnosed with bipolar 1, and I needed to take time off from school. I really feel like it affected my jobs for at least a decade beyond. And I think working on the University of Washington campus was one of the first working environments where I felt comfortable disclosing this, not necessarily in the application process, of course, but eventually and certainly working in this office. I don't always bring that up when working with students, but I do feel like it has informed sort of my own understanding of the complexity of navigating this not just the transition into careers, but even beyond that, the working spaces themselves and the colleagues and resources that are available to us to experience the world and to feel comfortable and safe in the places where we work, I guess. So I lean on that experience sometimes in trying to answer questions for students that they're trying to navigate. It may be a little bit different for every student, but I think there's lots of ways where having that personal experience helps me kind of honestly tell students that it can turn out okay and you can find the right space. It may take a long time and it may not be the path that you thought it was.
Absolutely. I think that's really poignant. I think for most of us, it's not the path that maybe we thought it would be. And I have to say, I am so glad that's true because my path has brought me to all of you. So initially, I would say, have you seen any impacts of this partnership with Travis and DRS and the Internship Center more broadly?
Well, one impact is that I love having fun with Travis and Heather. So it's been good for me personally. The impact to students is really hard to know specifically because we don't have access to students' disability records. And we'll get to this a little bit later, but I think that one of the primary impacts has been just the learning for myself, which I've also been able to share with staff as well. But coming back to students, my hope is that another impact is that students with disabilities are beginning to trust us a little more. as we learn to advertise things through related campus partners, and as Travis talks to all of his student employees about the things we're trying to do, that it generates this like buzz of some sort that, okay, this career and internship center place, they really care about this. They're really trying hard. They're trying to understand our needs and meet our needs. And so then that will, I joke a lot about my work as planting seeds everywhere all the time. And so I view a lot of this as like the seed planting part that will continue to have impact down the road as we continue this work as well.
I love that metaphor of planting seeds. I'm going to turn to you, Travis. Disability services on college campuses don't offer career counseling, at least not officially, as we've talked about. And generally, this is seen as something that's beyond their scope. So I'm wondering if you can reflect on whether or not this partnership has impacted you or your colleagues' work with students at DRS, and if so, in what ways?
Yeah, I do think it's had a number of impacts, and I really do know that I want to expand beyond the initial agreement that it's really wonderful to work with you, Heather, and with you, Briana, and some of the things that we've done in this office so far, even at these early stages, have had this ripple effect, I think, through the community that knows about DRS, maybe knows about the Career and Internship Center here at the University of Washington, maybe are in the Disability Studies program or have friends who are, or maybe have someone they know who identifies as having a disability or themselves. It's so interesting, but we have people come into this office. Even I haven't shared this with you all, but it was, I think, earlier this week there was someone who stopped by our office here at DRS to ask if we were going to put on another panel, like we did earlier, I think in January, to discuss kind of topics around disclosure and career development and internships. I think little things like that indicate to me and to the other folks in my office that I think things are moving. We're definitely growing in this pilot project, and it's really meaningful. I think just to point out, I think what's been said actually in this meeting already, and I know people have different experiences with disability as a as individuals, of course. So I feel like knowing that there are people who are actively thinking about students with disabilities going into the workforce is something that just saying it out loud in the groups that I'm in has raised great conversations from my colleagues who do different things. Our office does way too many things for me to understand all that much of it in detail or go into it here. But that people who have been doing this for a lot longer than I have, who are really deep in some of the work that Disability Resources for Students does, are taking notice too, and I think will be bigger parts of this project going forward. I believe that, and I think I see those things starting.
I'd like to chime in with a tangible impact, since I have only talked about intangible, is that we do have two students who identify as having a physical disability doing internships this summer with employers who are super excited to have them, are interested in their talent and their skill, and also potentially utilizing the experience that they have as a student with a disability to impact the work of the organization. So that has been a tangible impact that will come this summer, but has also been an exciting part of this community of practice.
Thanks for that, Briana. It is really helpful to have kind of the concrete or tangible examples or impacts that you're talking about that. And along those lines, I'm wondering, are there things that you have maybe learned from this partnership that you wouldn't have known about, or you wouldn't have learned, or wouldn't have had access to without it?
I'll start. I definitely think so. Where working with the Career and Internship Center, even though our offices are physically pretty close to each other on campus, knowing what's going on there more has been really, really exceptional. And so that we can we can kind of plan for the future in our office. I think also with disability studies, kind of just getting to a point where we're working toward similar goals, and sharing what we're doing, sometimes informally in between some of the project moments, I think helps build the network of support that we really are struggling to to reinforce and provide for all students here. I mean, and in the community beyond that, even. I think it's been really informative.
I would agree. A key learning for me has just been understanding who more of the key partners are in this area. And if I wanted to ask a question or promote a resource, I know who to go to now if I'm trying to connect in the disability space, and that's beneficial. I think we've also been able to learn what other schools are doing in this realm, and sometimes that's validating because, like, oh, we're doing that too, and sometimes it does provide ideas that we should consider and figure out if that's something we can implement at the University of Washington. I think I've been able to know a little bit more of just how truly diverse disability is, and have been able to work with students with a range of disabilities or panelists, which has also been really wonderful. And I'll just say two technical things is when we did our panel, I had never done a Zoom webinar with an interpreter and captioner. So I know more about how to make webinars accessible, and I wrote out instructions and put it in our Google Drive for our team so that we will know how to do this next time without Heather having to tell me every button to click in Zoom. So there's been a lot of things that I've learned and taken away from it.
I just want to interject quickly on that note of tangible things. I think it's really changed the conversations, at least that I have. I think some of my colleagues here too, not just, are you looking for internships or jobs, or have you found one, but really asking what their interests are, or what they're going to be going through in terms of making the decisions on when and where and how many to apply for each student. So it's really expanded some of the basic vocabulary students here in this office and students that we serve in this office have in the conversations we're talking about and having around work and the workforce.
That is a great set of very tangible impacts as well as lessons that you've learned through this partnership. It's so exciting to do collaborative work like this. I'm also guessing, again, going back to Briana, you just mentioned it's a way of also gauging where our peer institutions are and the work that they're doing in this arena. Has this experience highlighted any gaps here at UW for doing this kind of important work?
This work is so meaningful. The work of career services and the work of disability resources for students, trying to help students navigate both the academic world and the career world. And what stands out for me is that there aren't enough humans meaning UW staff, to do it justice, to do it well, to do it at the scale that students with disabilities deserve. So I think a gap is, not enough student services staff to really do as much as I think we would all love to do to support these students.
Travis, are there areas in which you've identified gaps in the work that needs to be done?
Yeah, I think there are, put simply, I do think that our office operates on assumption that we're never going to be able to do everything we want to do for students. So as difficult as that is, we try everything we can do we like to call ourselves small but mighty in our office. We have lots of ways of describing the ways that we provide for different access needs. And I think it's definitely it's at the University of Washington. We have a massive campus that has lots of physical barriers, as well as classes that have lots of other impacts on students, specifically with disabilities, but even broadly for all students. But I do think that this has been really interesting to me in terms of rediscovering what gaps we have in our office and our work, but also like trying to translate those for the bigger picture in the quote unquote real world.
Yes, and I think it's so important to point out again um, that, accommodations that students use or make use of in order to be successful in school are not necessarily easily translatable uh, to the accommodations necessary to be successful in the workplace. I know that was true for me, continues to be true for me, and I also want to take just a moment to draw attention to our listeners that if they would like information about the resources folks have, if they're wondering about their rights in a workplace, or interested in hearing more about accommodations, that we do have a podcast with Dr. Katie Warden, who talks specifically about that. And I would refer folks to that podcast. But I'm wondering if on this kind of final note of the interesting work that the two of you have been involved in, if you can share with our audience a little bit, some overview of the ways in which the services offered through the Career Center and the Career and Internship Center is what's been designed to specifically help disabled students prepare for employment.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. Prior to this year, actually since about 2020, we do have a page on our website that is tailored to students with disabilities. And if people want to check that out, it's careers.uw.edu/channels/students dash with dash disabilities. Or if you just go to careers.uw.edu and click on interest and identity, you'll come to find it. And so we've improved that page with some new resources that we found out about. And that's where we also have put the recording of the panel that we did earlier in January, and some notes. So if people want to watch the video, they can, but also if they want to just read some highlights, they can do that. The page also talks about a survey that we did. We asked students with disabilities to talk about their experience with career fairs and to give some ideas on how to make all different elements of the career fairs more accessible. And we implemented a couple of those for the fair that we had this week. And we will continue to think about how to make career fairs more accessible for all students, and also how can we create different types of opportunities for students with disabilities to connect with recruiters that might not be a traditional fair. One other thing that we did that wasn't specific to students is we host an employer education webinar series, and we have good attendance at those. So employers from all over the country in all different types of industries attend these webinars. So just learn more about topics like how to create an internship, or how to think about DEI in their onboarding and make sure that onboarding and hiring are equitable, those sorts of things. So we invited our Fehribach Center partners to present an employer webinar, and we had 40 employers attend, so we were excited about that as well. So partly what we're doing is providing resources for students, but we're also trying to provide resources for employers as well. And I just looked at a website that has lots of resources for both of those groups, and we haven't had time to put those on our respective websites, but we'll try to do those soon as well. Those are some things that come to mind that have actually resulted from this partnership.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think that is a critical point is, the other part of this equation really is the employment sector and employers, right? Moving away from the like, well, we got to really bolster disabled students. They need to know where the resources are. They need to find the tools, et cetera, is reminding that, yes, it's also educating employers about what an accessible work environment looks like, the fact that the overwhelming majority of accommodations in the workplace cost nothing. despite the misconception that they're very expensive. And so I do think it's a really critical point that you bring up, Briana, is that not only are you trying to provide services and preparation to the students who are graduating from the University of Washington, but you're also trying to, again, impact the employment sector and provide them with information. And I think that that is such a strength. Also, again, with the partnership of with Travis and DRS in being able to pool resources and connections for knowing how to disseminate that information. And so I just want to invite you both, if there is anything else that you would like to talk about regarding this internship process or regarding this partnership that we haven't discussed yet.
Thank you, Heather. I do just want to express my excitement for being here today, and I also just wanted to say my excitement is I think mirrored from a lot of the students that I see, and both employees here at DRS, but also students we serve, knowing that these things are going on is, I think, the first step in the process of like you said, decimating this information that things are happening, and it's exciting. It's palpable, and I love to be a part of it. So really appreciate everything that we were able to be a part of here.
Ditto all of those things. It's been a personal privilege and delight to work with this group, and it's also been really rewarding just to see some of the tangible things that have already occurred. And I have immensely enjoyed and been humbled learning more about this space, learning more about disabilities and how to be accessible in all the different ways. So I am so glad and privileged to be part of the community of practice and to be improving our work in this area. I hope that a few years from now, if you were to ask me about impact, I would have lots of tangible things to say. So many students with disabilities of all shapes and sizes have been inspired to do internships that might not otherwise have thought about doing them.
That's great. And I would also add that so many employers would be newly aware of how beneficial it is to have disabled students and workers in their workplaces. Well, I want to thank both of you again very much, first of all, for being here, of course, but thank you for the work that you're doing. And we appreciate you and hope that you continue to plant seeds all throughout our campus and our region in helping college students with disabilities transition into the workforce. Thanks again for being here.